we're live, guys. How we doing? Joe Bando here, Bando Talks, the Everything Podcast with my good friend today, J. Curtis Strickland. How you doing, Strickland?
What's going on, man? I'm honored to be the first inaugural guest on your podcast.
Yeah, the first one. We're going to work out all the kinks. I'm almost 50 years old, so I'm pretty much a boomer when it comes to this stuff. So I'm learning as I go, brother.
Boomer talk. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm not really a boomer. I'm a Gen X, but they seem to, in today's culture, they skip Gen X because they fear us. So,
well, tell me about that, because they used to have Gen X, and then there was millennials, and then they changed the whole dynamic of that. They were saying that millennials are technically 82, and I'm like, I don't feel like a millennial. Every friend I had was Gen X. All the music I listened to was Gen X, and then apparently there's a term for it, like Zennials or something.
Well, there's Gen Z is now the youngsters. The millennials, I thought was like, because I thought my son was on the cusp of being a millennial, and he was born in '97. So I don't know. I don't know. They change the rules when they need to. They just want to be able to insult old people. So they figure out a way.
We old. That's it. That's all you got to know.
You're how old? You said 82.
I just
turned 40.
Yeah, I'm 82. I just turned 41.
41.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm 48. I'll be 49 next year. So
nice.
Getting closer to 50.
Nice.
So what's been going on with you, man? Are you back in North Carolina?
Back in North Carolina, escaped the People's Democratic Republic of California. It's just still going strong with the podcast. We got a lot of good people coming up. Got Jay Reason from The Distance and Diablo's Den podcast, and then Hoya from formerly of Madball, Smoke AD, who also does the Smoke and Word TV podcast, which is dope. Still doing the Hell's Heart merch company. We just did a special edition shirt for the band Zayo. It's a Zayo,
nice.
Yeah, Zayo Event Horizon mock. It's selling really well. So if you want one, we'll post the links later. But nice. Doing that. Just SAG finally came off strike, so I'm working on doing my SAG vocal acting. Re-up my dues and everything. So it's going to be good, man. There's a lot of stuff on the horizon.
So you do voiceover?
Well, I'm planning on it. I mean, just doing the podcast, a lot of people said, hey, you got a good voice. You should look into doing voice acting or audiobooks or something. And I've kind of overexposed myself in being on the podcast. And a lot of the times when you're not already like a known face or a known celebrity, people are like, oh yeah, the podcast guy or whatever, and so I think it'll help with the just kind of utilizing the name to do stuff that I'm already kind of in the vein of.
Right on.
Yeah.
So a lot of people may not know exactly who you are, but like Strickland, I was on his podcast. He was out here in LA. He's an old school hardcore kid, just like myself, and really into the hardcore scene. He tends to have a lot of people like that on his podcast, the TNF, the Tea and Fuckery podcast. Is that what we're still going with?
Rebranded. No, I mentioned this on, I did a podcast earlier in the year, and had to rebrand it a little bit just because of the algorithm. I mean, it will always be Tea and Fuckery, but it's the TNF podcast.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, same shenanigans and same, fucking bullshit antics. So yeah.
And we'll put the links to all your merch and your podcast and everything for everybody to get easy access to that. So
right on.
Yeah, I noticed you got, so the Hell's Heart merch is going strong. I noticed that you've had some pretty awesome guests in your podcast. You said Hoya, formerly of Madball. Hoya's no longer in Madball?
No, he stepped out, I think last year sometime. And I think it was on amicable terms. I don't think it was any like bad blood or anything like that. But yeah, he's doing that new group, Smoke AD, with Ezek from Scarhead. And and I think one of the guitar players from Hatebreed and one of the guys from Crown of Thorns. But it's Smoke all day. It's beefy, man. It sounds really good. It's the production's awesome. The songs are pretty sludgy and cool. And yeah,
Nice.
I mean, he's got his show with I don't know who he co-hosts it with, but it's a good show. I've watched it a few times. I think he's mostly the host, but then he has like guests on, and yeah, it's a cool little show. So looking forward to that. Nathan from Boy Sets Fire, Iron Roses is coming on the show. That should be interesting. Yeah, it's a lot of good guests, man.
And I noticed you had, I did listen to some of that. I didn't listen to it all because, man, I'm telling you, even though I'm putting out a podcast, it's hard to listen to podcasts all the time.
Of course.
There's just only so much time in the day, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's a shame. It's a shame when you got a lot of friends that have podcasts and they're like, oh, you didn't hear my episode? And I'm like, I'm sorry, you know, like, but yeah, there's just a lot of oversaturation.
My buddy Keith Reza, he's a stand-up comedian, used to write and work with Norm Macdonald, Bob Saget, and stuff. And
shit.
He's got a podcast called Reza Riffs, and he's got Asperger's, so he's a little socially awkward. So
I don't mean to laugh. I believe people have told me that I'm on the spectrum, so I get it.
Well, he totally gets some great guests, right? Like he's had, you know, Christy Swanson from, you know, the original Buffy.
Oh, damn.
He's had Bob Saget. He's had Norm Macdonald. Like he's had a lot of great guests. He just recently had Rosie O'Donnell on his show, actually, right?
Oh shit!
And,
okay.
Yeah. So but getting guests, he sends out the email, and then I go ahead, and because I have a background in sales, obviously, I have no problem calling people and following up on those emails because that's where he gets weird about it, right? So I think it was Betsy Russell was one of the ones I got on his podcast for him. And just recently, he's about to have Tony Rock, you know, Chris Rock's brother, on his podcast. So I don't listen to his podcast, though. Like, I've heard some bits and pieces, but I help him get guests on his podcast, and I don't even have the time to really listen to it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's wild.
It's a shame, man. Yeah, it's just there's so much good stuff out there. And, you know, I fully endorse and support, you know, all the podcasts. I had a guest on, Todd Davis, and he does like a Star Trek centered podcast called Computer Resume Podcast. And now he's getting I've been on the podcast, but he's getting all the big dogs from Star Trek on there. And so every so often when he has like a really awesome guest, like he had Chase Masterson from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and she was like the fucking hottest girl on that show. And so I had to go and listen to it. I'm like, oh shit. Yeah. You know, like, and good for him, you know, like I think it's great. I'm going to be a return guest on that when he starts doing good Star Trek, the classic shit that I grew up with and like. So yeah, he's got a good.
Yeah. Star Trek took on a whole, man, people, that's a cult following if I've ever heard of one. My God.
It is, but it you know, it's lost a lot of people in its newest iterations because it sucks. It's not good. It's not good at all. I think
the last Star Trek I watched was Wrath of Khan, so that's how far back I go.
You've missed a lot on a lot of good stuff, man. I mean, really, truthfully, to me, Star Trek died with the Scott Bakula series Enterprise. Like that was I think the last time we saw any real Star Trek, and now what they do is just dumpster fire. And I've been on record saying it. I've been on Todd's show saying it. Like I don't give a shit.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't like. I'm not much of a sci-fi guy, but Scott Bakula, that's the guy from what
Quantum Leap,
right?
Yeah, man.
Dude, that was an amazing show.
Yeah, it was
great.
That was
a great show.
They tried to bring it back, but who cares?
I tend to avoid anytime they try to bring stuff back or redo something or reboot something. Like I won't watch the new Willy Wonka. Like I just, you know, that's one of the things about like life is we only have so much time in a day. We only have so much energy, right? And that's kind of what this podcast to me, why I'm putting this out there is because like I want to stop consuming and more creating, you know?
Yeah.
And that to me that's kind of like, I guess you call it like a New Year's resolution or whatever for this coming year is to like, you know, stop scrolling on media, stop commenting on things that have really no meaning, and just really start creating more. So that's what I've been, you know, really trying to focus on moving forward. So
yeah, and it's hard because, you know, I'm kind of in the same boat in that I don't I try not to spend as much time on social media. Unfortunately, by the nature of our trades, we kind of have to, and so
Yeah,
then you get
definitely.
sucked into this whole vortex of like, oh, let's comment on this political post. Oh, wow, that fucking thought has a nice ass. I'm going to fucking give her a little heart emoji or whatever, and so, yeah, you end up just wasting time on there when you could be invested in your own endeavors, and
Well,
it,
and we're triggered, constantly by this stuff.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's designed to keep you engaged, and it does.
Well, yeah, the algorithms are definitely, they like the outrage. The more you're outraged, the more you're going to consume, right?
Of course.
I got in a black hole on social media where I was watching all these like, random people getting in fights at McDonald's and shit like that. And that was like all it kept showing me. I was like, and then God forbid you comment like that ghetto bitch deserves what she got or whatever you say. And then all of a sudden it's like sending you more.
Yeah. I had to start liking cat memes and shit on Instagram because it was like, I mentioned this on another podcast. It would be like just e-girls on Instagram, and like my whole feed was filled by it. I'm like, oh, she's nice. Oh, she's nice. Oh, she's nice. And then it's like, I'm spending way too much time doing this shit. And it's just, for somebody that's aspiring to be like a spiritualist, it's just not good, and so, yeah, you really have to kind of like rein that in when you're on there.
Well, I'm noticing now that a lot, like with all this invention of AI, that a lot of those thoughts you're seeing now and moving forward into the future are not even real people. And it's uncanny, like that they're like OnlyFans models that are just guys, nerds
people.
probably. They're just making AI. Yeah, it's very real. So for me, like if I was in that situation, because I'm happily married and spiritually, as far as like that goes, like those thoughts, if I see them on there trying to get attention, I'll like look for a flaw and then just rag on her. But like that's just how I am. So they need to be brought down.
I hate that shit, man. Their dopamine release just goes down after that. They need that validation, man.
Girl, you're not hot. I see a muffin top. Like move on. Like, And
it's interesting because you mentioned the subject of marriage. I've kind of done an about face since the time you came onto my podcast, which was like roughly about a year ago, I think. And I've kind of reevaluated my whole thoughts on thoughts. Like I think that it's and I was having a conversation with one of my friends the other day. I think that whole kind of angle for women is actually kind of exploitative, not only to the women but more to the men. And then you just find yourself like investing all this time, all this money, like, oh, well, now you got to pay to talk to these girls and all this other shit. And so I'm actually of the opinion now that, yeah, I think a lot of that is psychologically damaging, and socially it puts us at this place where we don't have normal human interactions anymore, and that's something that's already hard for me, and it just exacerbates it when I'm on there just simping for hoes and shit, so I don't engage in that anymore, and I'm trying to lock it down and go on the straight and narrow, and maybe get in some sort of monogamous marriage type situation. So changed my opinion totally.
It's spiritually damaging, more than anything, I think, to like we have our emotions, I feel like, are like the doorway to our soul, right? And like when we get our emotions caught up with our root level kind of sexual desires, and we don't have control over them, they're controlling us. We lose a lot spiritually in that path. And I know you're a very spiritual guy. I know you really try for that. So yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to say. A lot of people like, I have an amazing wife. I've been married for 12 years. We've been together for 15. We're very connected. We get stronger every day, and it does help. And I see it though. I watch it, like I've seen friends of mine who are female stand-up comedians that as soon as the lockdowns hit, man, they're OnlyFans girls,
Yeah.
And then,
but at the same time, like I'll
you're frozen, bud.
bit and say, can you blame them?
Oh, there you go. You were frozen for a minute. Can you repeat that?
Oh, you're pooping out.
Oh, you were a second ago.
Yeah, I lost you for a second. We completely waylaid people. Damn it. We went out for a second, but I'll pick it up. We completely waylaid people's ability to earn money and to be able to have some sort of income. And so, I think a lot of those girls were forced to do it out of necessity. Is it Not really. It's not. I think that, but like I said, they're able to support themselves, especially if they're like a single woman or whatever. It's kind of one of those like damned if you do, damned if you don't type situations.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even like myself, like during the lockdowns, like I felt like there's a big part of it was to push us into this virtual reality a little bit more, right? And like get into the metaverse and stuff. So here I am in 2023, finally starting a podcast, which is unheard of for a comedian to not have a podcast, right?
Right.
Like every comedian has a podcast. And I was, considering doing it back then, but I decided like against it. I kind of like went against the grain. And now here I am, feel like I'm playing catch up a little bit, trying to build a following and all that stuff. But I think it's coming from a better place because now because for me, I don't want to be a clown. I don't want to feel like I'm out there like, hey, look at me, come, and obsessing over my follower counts and my views and all this stuff.
Right.
But
dialing into the pulse. And, I was doing a lot of like, movie reactions and things like that. And there's so many other channels out there that are doing this better than me. Why not try to take a different approach? Like I started doing the interviews and I'm, even my dad suggested me, he's like, I think you should just do that. And I was like, yeah, I think you're right, because it's more of like an archival podcast at this point to where I can sit and talk to musicians and people that I looked up to instead of, oh, what's the latest Marvel movie? This is trash. And it's like, everybody on the internet is saying this, let's try to like take a different approach and maybe, enrich people's lives instead of, a lot of this stuff is just garbage, and I'm privy to a lot of it. I watch a lot of those movie reaction channels, but I'm like, is this really where I want to be in my life? What I want to be doing, what I want to be investing my time in? And the answer was no,
right.
So.
Yeah, for me, I look at it like, like one of the things Rogan's the biggest podcaster in the world. I don't want to keep harping about him, but, Rogan did what he wanted to do. He talked to people he was interested in talking to. And that's kind of what I'm headed towards with this. Like, I want to talk to people that are interesting, that I find interesting, put the content together, have great conversation, and just put it out into the void. And in my opinion, cream will then float to the top, right? Like you just, if if not, I had an amazing time talking to interesting people, learning things and just, expanding my reach as far as like people I'm talking to, right? Like I got some great ideas for podcasts. Like Don Foose is going to be on.
Yeah.
I got a great list. And Don's been bugging me to do a podcast for a while. He wants to be on. So
Don would actually probably be a great co-host, truthfully.
Yeah, I'm definitely not looking to do a co-host because it's like anything. I just want to do it my own and then not have to worry about others and arranging. And one of the things I like about being a stand-up comedian is that like it's just me up there.
Well, yeah. And I mean that, with the podcast thing, I almost look at it like I'm doing a band without doing a band, because with a band, you've got all these different personalities, you've got all these different quirks and character traits. And, if, you've played in a band, so, like dealing with people sometime. Oh, we got to be to the venue at 6 p.m. Oh, I'm going to be fucking late, I got to do this. And, sometimes personalities clash. And so to be able to do a podcast or something like, doing stand-up comedy, you're essentially the master of your own vessel, and your success is incumbent upon you and solely you. And I know I can depend on myself. Like it makes it so much easier. And you're like booking shows. Like booking a hardcore show. Okay, well, I want you to be on the show. Can you be here at da 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 da? And then, yeah, I mean, your success or failure is completely dependent on you. So it's a beautiful thing, actually.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I know that that's something I've heard John Toll say, because he was in bands for a long time, and he's like, this is like being in a band without all the assholes and all the equipment, and it's like
Exactly.
it's really cool. Like, I mean, you've been to see me perform. It's like I just show up like right before the show. Like, what time am I going on? Cool, get up on stage, and you see some of these guys, the big names in LA. They're doing 3-4 sets a night. They don't even show up for the show. They show up for their slot. What time am I going on? 10 o'clock. Okay, cool. I'll be there at 9:50. 9:50, they're there. They get up on stage. Boom, they're gone again. They go to another show.
Yeah, you mentioned Richard Lewis did that, it's crazy to me. You'd think a lot of them would go and kind of mingle with the people there, which I'm sure he probably did at one point, but then it's just like, like you said, your time is valuable, and some people can't really stand to be in the just be around a bunch of people. I know that that's kind of sometimes typical of stand-up comedians, is they deal with like social anxiety, and so a way to kind of curtail a lot of that is just to get up on stage and just immerse yourself in it, and kind of be vulnerable. And so I could totally understand why people would just be like, nah, I don't want to just hang out with the crowd. I want to go in and get 8 hours of sleep.
Well, even when you're sitting in the green room, it's like, I did this thing with this guy, Alan Havey, and he was on Billions. He's been a stand-up comedian for 42 years. Guy's like 67 years old or something. And like, we're in the green room. It's like, I'm not trying to talk to this guy. He's getting ready to go up. Like, and when I'm getting ready to go up, like I'm in my zone. I'm looking at my jokes, or I'm like meditating, or I'm like trying to get ready to go up on stage. Like, we don't want to even really talk to each other,
right?
After the show, maybe if you're still around, we'll talk a little bit or whatever. But
that's like an actor kind of is the same way. Like, some people don't want to engage. Like, I've done a few plays, and you're just kind of, it's almost like a meditation, because you're like, okay, well, I got to go out here in 10 minutes. All right. And you just like run the lines in your head, much like you would run a set in your head, and just kind of, you got to be, I started to understand more and more why actors and actresses, like big names and whatnot, they don't necessarily want people to engage with them. And it's not because they're douchebags. It's because they're really focused on their craft, and they're trying to, just, stay in the zone, like you said.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I know for me, like I have like a little ritual I do before I go up on stage, and it's nothing to do with look. I can overlook at my material, and then if I look at it too much, then I get engaged in the set, and then it doesn't allow me to like really kind of be fluid on stage. So for me, I sit with willing hands, and I meditate, and I breathe into my belly and focus on my third eye, and just kind of, okay, whatever's going to happen up there is going to happen up there.
That's all you got to do. I mean, that's really the best thing to do too, man. You can't be, as Krishna consciousness says, you can't be attached to the results of your activities. Like, you just got to get out there and do it. And if you have a great set, if you have a good show, great. If you don't, whatever, like, just keep it pushing,
Yeah, it's exactly right. You just have to allow the universe to kind of do its thing, ride the waves. You can't push the river is something my wife's really been saying a lot lately. And trying to live that in everyday life in every aspect, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you get fired from a job, or you get, I just recently got downsized from Harley because Harleys aren't selling, and I'm like,
yeah, I was wondering about that.
Now?
Like, you're still doing that, but what else are you kind of doing to keep busy?
Right now, I'm supposed to be starting a job doing some sales for like in the financial world starting next week, but I'm still waiting to kind of solidify an exact start date, so I don't feel completely confident in it.
Okay.
I just had a job interview at Lexus, and I'm waiting to hear back from them. But I don't know that I want to go. I don't know that I want to go work in another dealership.
Yeah.
It's a grind. It is like, and by a grind, I mean you got a deal comes in right before close. You're there till sometimes midnight, right?
Oh yeah.
You gotta work weekends. You have no choice. Like, and it's like, I need to have my passion available to me. And
it's nice when you're a creator too, that you have a job that is able to facilitate that, and I think that's what a lot of like creatives and artists kind of look for, is the ability to, you've got your day job, but your day job is also accommodating to what you're trying to do creatively.
Yep, I agree. And that's, that's why I like this job at the finance thing. It's 7:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. There's never a weekend. You're never there after 4:30. It's got enough of an opportunity for me to, get rewarded for my hustle, which is one thing I like about sales, because I'm a hustler. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. And so right now I'm just Uber Eats driving, trying to get through the end of the year and see what happens next year. But man, it's a challenge every day to just go, okay, just whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I'm here.
How are you doing with that, by the way? Because that's something I used to do in LA. Have you had any interesting experiences with that before?
I've met some interesting people. I've had some awkward experiences. I've had, gay Russian guy invite me into his house to have sex. I had some total thought looking girl that the other day was answered the door, and she had just gotten back from Vegas, and I was dropping off more liquor for her. She was hammered, and she had this top on that has the cleavage comes through the front here, so you can see the inside here. Yeah, and her right tit was just hanging out, or no, she didn't even realize it. But and she was flirty with me as I'm leaving. She's like, "You're kind of cute." And I'm like, "Have a good day." No interest.
Married.
And then I met a very famous streamer, Instagram YouTuber, Anomaly. I don't know if you know who that is.
Anomaly, yeah. Does work out his own rap music.
Yes, and he's somebody that I feel like a big part of him got me through the lockdowns. His political perspective is very nuanced, and I was delivering to him. And I can't say where he lives, but he asked me not to, because he's a very controversial guy in a lot of ways. So
I do like Anomaly a lot. I had some rather interesting exchanges, much like you said. I delivered to some guy, and it was pretty late at night, and he came to the door just in a fucking G-string and just smiled at me, and I was like, "All right, have a good day, bye."
That was like the Russian guy. He was in boxer briefs, so that was it. And
but I'll tell you what. You come in, you get some food with me. No, I had a really interesting experience. I delivered to Ellen Page, now Elliot Page, and it was before she transitioned or whatever, and the name said Elliot on there, and I was like, okay, well, whatever. And it was, I won't disclose the location either, but it was in LA, and it was she, I believe at the time. Yeah.
I'd say she now too.
Sure. Which is a shame. It's a shame. You look at old pictures of her, and she was cute, man. What the fuck?
Juno,
man. Yeah. Inception. What the fuck? And just came and walked out and was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And I'm like, "It's fucking Juno. Holy shit," And then I got a really good compliment one time where I delivered to a group of women, and I was walking away, and they were like, "That's the hottest DoorDash driver I've ever seen." And I was like, "Yes."
It's an interesting gig, It is. The majority of out here in Orange County, the majority of people I'm delivering to are just Asians getting Asian food constantly.
Yeah.
I'm constantly going from, Fountain Valley, where they have a lot of little Asian restaurants and stuff, super authentic.
Yeah.
Delivering out to Irvine.
I used to get delivery orders for people in Glendale, and it would always be an Armenian name or whatever.
Of course.
But it would be at 2 a.m, and they would be lousy tippers. And I'm after a while, I just started to decline all of them. I'm not driving all the way up to Glendale for $5 fucking. Fuck you, man. I'm not doing it. I'm not,
Yeah. I mean, the money is crap when you start factoring in wear and tear in your car and gas and, Bidenomics with regards to that. And it's just, but it's a way to hustle, it's right now it's okay, I got a minimum payment coming due for my Harley. I got to go hustle some Uber Eats and bring them dollars in,
Yeah.
But it also kind of cool because okay, I got a show in LA. Well, I'm gonna Uber Eats on my way to LA all day, and then when I get there, go do my show.
Yeah.
it's an opportunity to, still make some money. Well, doing what I got to do. I can stop when I want to stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, I think those gig jobs are really, critical to being able to, pursue your craft but being able to be like, I don't want to work anymore. Done. Turn off the app. I'm done.
yeah.
Like it's a nice thing.
Or I'm bored. Let me, what am I doing right now? Like, oh, I can't sleep. Let me go hop out and do, because the late night you get some pretty good money too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny.
Pretty cool.
I had a delivery one time when I was living in Charlotte. No, I'm sorry. It was an actual Uber. I did actual Uber for a while, and that was always a mixed bag. But I ended up driving a girl who was like she was a NASCAR driver, but like in the lower like series, they go like they have different tiers and whatnot. And she was like, "Hey, you wanna come in for a bit?" And I was like, bloop, turned off the app and I hung out. And then when she found out I was vegan, she was like, "Oh, no, okay," And then I told her I told her I didn't drink, and like she was like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm kind of tired right now." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, whatever." She had like a big pizza there with like pepperoni on it and stuff. And she's like, "You want some pizza? You want some beer?" I was like, "Well, I don't drink and I don't eat meat." And she was like, "Oh, okay. Oh boy, it's getting late." And I was like, "Fuck. All right, whatever."
Yeah, the not drinking thing can be rough, like in the dating world,
Yeah.
Like it's rough. It's rough just like networking in general, like or like even as a comedian, like that's one thing I noticed too. Like you go out and like one of the ways to get good gigs as a comedian is to be a good hang. And a lot of times if you're not drinking, like, and you like, what do you do? Oh, I'm drinking soda water with lime all night, at the Comedy Store or something. Like, people think you're a little bit weird, which just goes to show how powerful like that drug is, right? Like, it is powerful.
I totally agree with you there. And much like in the acting world, I was talking with somebody like, you got to go to the rooftop parties and you got to go to all these mixers and stuff. And that just was never me. I mean, even when I did drink, I wasn't a big like social drinker, I didn't really go out. I just kind of like did it, and it really kind of makes it difficult to be able to network, like you said. And I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and we were talking about the town that I live in now is very conservative, and I don't say that in a bad way. I think it's great, but it's very like conservative and very family oriented, which sucks for somebody that's single. Like I was saying, LA is like kind of an embarrassment of riches when it's like single people can go and see like an art house movie from the 60s at like 2 a.m. Like you can't do shit like that here. It's all geared towards the nuclear family and just being able to what's safe, what's what's conducive for bringing my family to, and it's just kind of boring and dull for somebody like me.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess like the quality of women you probably will meet organically out in the world is probably a lot better as far as morals, ethics, and values and things.
It's unfortunate though, because I came to the realization where I got to be on the same spiritual path. I got to have the same ethics. I mean, you and I have had the discussion about veganism and stuff. I don't really want to date a meat eater or be involved with a meat eater, and that's just personally me. Especially when it comes from.
So you like mentally ill women? I get it. It's cool.
I like them purple hairs, man. What can I say? Okay. So I've equated it to, like if the goal is to raise children, you kind of want to have the same values. And specifically with veganism and meat eating, I don't want my children to eat meat. I just don't, and if somebody,
oh God, I find that to be child abuse. It is. It's abuse. I really do believe that, especially children who are growing. They need that protein. They need that fat. They need that animal.
But I mean, protein can be found in vegetables and
not as bioavailable. It's just there's zero science out there that indicates anything is as nutrient dense when it comes to protein as animal products, specifically beef. That is just undeniable.
Well, I don't know if you knew this or not, but the cow's blood from a cow is actually has the same like nutritional properties as cow's milk. So, from a, certain perspective, like if you're a vegetarian, which, I am not, I supplement myself with different vitamins and nutrients and different foods in order to be able to maintain a vegan diet. But, if you eat like from a purely vegetarian perspective, you're going to get the same benefits with less of the detriments of a meat-based diet.
No, I disagree 1,000%.
No?
And all the scientific evidence actually points to that, because you're getting more detriment from consuming so much fiber, so much vegetables that have a lot of anti-nutrients as well. Like it's a balancing act. It really is. As somebody who gotten optimal health and is really in that world being a carnivore, like I just disagree vehemently that that's the case. Wow, like if you have to supplement here,
we've had this discussion before on my channel.
We have. Let's just you touched on one thing that I want to say too, okay. Do you feel like the optimal human diet would be something that you necessarily have to supplement to achieve optimal health? Like, isn't the idea that you have to supplement the problem?
No, because I think a lot of it, and we've had this conversation, like I said before, on my channel, which you can view. I'll post the link down here. I think that we'd mentioned that a lot of the foods, even meat, are nutritionally deficient. So I don't necessarily believe that to be able to supplement your diet with vitamins or, minerals or whatever. I don't think that that's a failing of veganism. I think that, just all across the board, we have to be able to do that. And much like I said, from my spiritual perspective, I believe that you incur serious karma from harming an animal, and that you can, eventually, one of the things that Srila Prabhupada mentions in the Vedas is that, a lot of the reason that we have conflict and war in the world is because of animal slaughter. And also, like anything that deviates from the four regulative principles of Krishna consciousness, be it, sexual deviancy, be it gambling, be it intoxication, things like that. This all reaps this collective negative karma upon the world. And so a lot of the reason we have to send men and women to die in conflicts is because it's like attrition for the souls of the animals that we're essentially stealing.
Well, I would say that just sounds absolutely batshit crazy, bro. Especially when you I would say that the body is a temple, and that food was put here for, like, animals. There's a food chain. This is a cycle that is designed for a reason. I mean, how would you justify thousands of years of hunter-gatherers out there hunting meat that eats vegetables, that process it properly so that we can then have optimal nutrition? Well, I think that there's a lot of evidence and a lot of vegans out there who are in horrible health, and they end up having to go back, and they go to a meat-based diet, and they see all the benefits. And isn't that truly where spiritually we should be, is taking care of our temple?
But conversely, the same can be said for meat eaters as well.
No, it can't. No, it can't.
No,
it can't. No, because you're not isolating. Nope, that has nothing to do with meat. That has to do with a diet filled with all sorts of other processed foods and things, right? So if you're a meat eater and you eat processed foods, much like any, say you're a vegan and you eat a lot of processed foods, it's going to be equally detrimental, no? Equally so I would say that, yes, like, we are having the wrong conversations. It's not meat versus no meat. It should be processed foods. It should be, where is your food coming from? Are you eating packaged food? Are you eating garbage? Are you on the standard American diet, right? Like, we see vegans all the time go from the standard American diet to a vegan diet, and they thrive for a while. But in the end, if they're not properly supplementing, because they're not getting the nutrition that they need from eliminating plant foods, they end up doing really poorly. I mean, there's tens of thousands of stories of vegans, right? I think this comes back to some of the media that we're consuming, right? Like, you're a guy like me who does not trust the government, does not trust big business, and with COVID and all that stuff as well. Why? How can you there is a narrative that plant-based is the way to go. People like Bill Gates are pushing this. People like, all these big food corporations, right? Like veganism and vegetarian is in and of itself came from the Kellogg's Corporation, right?
I will counter that statement in that, you can look even further beyond that. And, there was an international vegan society in England that started in the 1940s. And so I don't think that it's necessarily, it doesn't stem from like big government or any of those things. I think that perhaps these corporations and these entities have essentially hijacked and repurposed a lot of those things in order to be able to sell their bullshit products. Like, an Impossible Burger, it's not good for you. It's really not.
It's actively very bad for you.
Sure.
It's
but
very bad for you.
At the same time, there was a period in my life where I would make all my own food. Like I would do black bean burgers and things like that, homemade with vegetables, black beans and things like that. So it's not you're right. It's not a sustainable way to be able to live. Simultaneously, like I said, from the spiritual perspective, if I'm not incurring the karma of eating meat, well, it's something I would do kind of in a pinch, like, okay, I'm out on the road and, Carl Buechner from Earth Crisis and I had this conversation. It's like, yeah, it's not ideal to get like, just bean burritos from Taco Bell,
Carl's in optimal metabolic health, obviously, these days. So
I don't know. Is that a joke?
Yeah. I mean, the dude looks ridiculously bloated and horrible. Every picture I've seen of him in recent years.
But then you defend Don Foos. So what is Don Foos doing differently that's allowing him to be in optimal health?
I don't think Don's in as optimal health as he would be if he ate like a very meat-based diet. I think Don's in excellent health for a vegan.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
So
I would say for a vegan, he's in optimal, and it's because he does, he and I talked at length about this when I was in Cleveland 2 times ago and he came out to see me perform. And, his problem is with vegans is the, that they're eating all the wrong foods. They're eating all the processed foods and they're not eating the real whole foods. And so I would say that like on either side of the spectrum, that's the most important thing. Eating real food, number one, first and foremost. So that's a place for common ground.
Let me intercede real quick. If somebody did that as a vegan, what's the problem?
Longevity.
If somebody was on a whole foods plant-based diet as a vegan, could they not be in optimal health?
With a lot of supplementation, which is to me is evidence that it's not the optimal human diet. And are they thriving or are they just surviving? Like I would say that, and you're also looking at somebody, Don's always been in good shape, like I've been seeing the Spud Monsters since the early 90s. And like, this guy could jump higher than any friggin' frontman I've ever seen. And he's always been ripped and he's always been in good health. And he's doing all these other things that are optimizing that, through physical fitness and working out and yoga. And, like Don's always been that guy. So, it's not, to me, evidence that the vegan diet is him thriving. I think he thrives for a vegan, and I think that's the exception to the rule.
Are you saying that the solution is just to eat meat and then, you just eat meat and then you don't supplement it with anything else, like whether it be exercise or whether it be vitamins or anything like that?
Well, no, I would say that like for people who are super metabolically unhealthy, that just eating meat is a way to kind of get back to, a good place of, optimal physical health because you're eliminating all this other stuff. And then you kind of start from there, like I haven't been carnivore for the last 7 or 8 months. I've incorporated, sweet potatoes. I've incorporated some fruits and I've incorporated.
How fucking dare you, sir? How dare you?
Well, but I'm still meat based, like to me, like I still eat steak almost every day. I still eat, organ meats and things like that. So
what is lacking from meats specifically? I know B12 is one, which you can get through kale, nutritional yeast. You can get it through kombucha. You can get it through things like that. What are some other things that you feel, and just even milk, like Srila Prabhupada said, cow's milk improves higher brain function. Now with
Yes,
vegans,
absolutely.
with vegans, you got coconut milk, which also improves higher brain function.
But coconuts don't lactate, but so I wouldn't call it milk, but it's coconut juice. And I think coconut is
you
a
get
good
what I'm
source
saying. Like
of
coconut milk,
natural
coconut water.
fats.
Yeah, natural fats.
Same with avocados, a good natural fat.
Yep.
But where are those foods coming from? What about the pesticides? Like, how are they grown? Where, like those are all the questions we should be having.
If you just said you like
to
eat meat because it tastes good, I would accept that answer.
Meat tastes really good, and it does, because there's no way you don't think it does. But meat tastes really good because your body's craving the nutrients. So when you get to a place where you're actually in touch with your body spiritually, physically, kind of have that connection, you can then have that, what they call intuitive eating. Like, that's true intuitive eating, right? You have to eliminate processed foods and sugars and all that stuff. The body positive movement has definitely taken over the idea of intuitive eating. I mean, you see it all the time. At least I see it all the time with these vegans. And then all of a sudden, it's like their health is declining and declining and declining. And then they eat some meat, and it's like all these cells start to awaken in their body and their brain, and it's like, oh my God, what have I been doing to myself? And then they start to thrive again.
Okay, let's take an example of two restaurants in Los Angeles. You've got Gracias Madre or Cafe Gratitude versus a place like Doomie's. Okay, like when I would eat. Okay, well, Cafe Gratitude and Gracias Madre are like higher end vegan food, like your real kind of not fatty stuff, more kind of very, very streamlined, not heavy in oil or anything like that. When I would eat there versus Doomie's, which is kind of towards the latter, it's just like vegan junk food, like vegan stoner food, essentially. When I would eat at those two places, and don't get me wrong, they were both good, but when I would eat at a place where it was lighter and it was kind of prepared with better ingredients and stuff like that, I definitely felt better. So I don't think that, again, I think there's a lot of bullshit out there. I think there's a lot of bullshit food. Doomie's, while delicious, is bullshit food. But, Cafe Gratitude, Gracias Madre were like, okay, this is healthy. This is a way that somebody can live their life and thrive.
I disagree that they can thrive only eating that food. I think they need some animal protein and fat in their diet to truly thrive.
Well, to cap this all off, I ain't banging no more meat eaters. And that's where we started with this.
No, but these are good conversations.
Meat, but I ain't eating no meat.
These are good
beef. That's it.
These are good. I get it. So you want either very overweight or very crepey looking, no muscle chicks. I get it.
Overweight? Why would you be overweight if you're vegan?
A lot of vegans are overweight because they overconsume sugar and carbs.
I do know some overweight vegans, but I think en masse, well, like myself, I'm at optimal weight right now. I am at 150 something pounds, which is good for a person of my stature, and I exercise, and I mean, I feel pretty good, You
did also say you're anemic, and I think that comes from a deficiency.
I did mention that I have anemia, but I also feel that, we were talking about the vape. I think that's affecting things significantly. I don't like it. I don't like it, but I do it. And then I also have a history of blood disorders in my family that have really, all these people were meat eaters. And so, like my dad deals with high blood pressure. My grandmother was hypoglycemic, so I don't think that it may be a part of it, but at the same time, I do have genetics that would, possibly that could be where it's coming from. I don't know.
But genetics can be overrun by lifestyle changes in a lot of cases. Like you see people who have diabetes in their family, and then they eliminate, change their diet, change their lifestyle, get good sleep, start to become spiritual, meditate, breathe. Things like breath work are super powerful to, help with your health and with your,
Sure.
connection here.
Sure.
So
100%.
a lot of those things can be, eliminated by, like my family, diabetes, kidney problems are in my family. My father was 400 plus pounds, and died from, he had a stroke and then diabetes, and he was, basically unable to even take care of himself, and was in,
was he a meat eater?
my father ate whatever he could. So yes, sure, he ate meats, but he also would polish off a half a bag of potato chips while watching TV and not moving his body. And he would also eat like pizzas and right. So all the stuff, but we're not isolating meat in that case, right?
Right. That's what I'm saying, though. I mean, I think you could. I mean, I'm not an advocate for eating meat, but I think if you know, and we've mentioned this before. I think if you
hold on 1 second.
Sure.
I'm having an issue here technically. Hold on.
All right.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. My AirPods. Go ahead.
So I think that if you eat bullshit food, regardless of the diet, like I'm not advocating for this, but if you ate, like we had mentioned before, grass-fed meat, if we'd ate like, what are they, free range and stuff like that, that's a little bit better for you. Much like if you eat whole foods, plant-based, that's better for you. We can both mutually agree that the garbage food is not a good supplement for any diet.
100%.
I think that's where our common ground is, and I think that's
I
don't think it's a meat eating versus vegan thing. I think it's just quality of food more than anything.
I think that's the number one thing. I do believe all humans to thrive should have meat in their diet predominantly.
Well, that is agree to disagree.
We will have to agree to disagree on that, absolutely. But I think the most important thing about this conversation is that we're having this conversation.
Of course,
and I think that so many people aren't willing, especially on your side of the aisle, for the vegan side of the aisle. They're now it's like any other, because it's a very radical left position to take. Which is why I brought that up earlier, as the radical left and all the different organizations that are affiliated and governments are demonizing meat in such a drastic way right now.
Which is a damn shame, because I don't think it should be politically affiliated. I think that, a lot of people that are on the left, they're always looking for some cause to champion. We got to champion this cause, and that I think is a huge turnoff from people that are, maybe they're interested in undertaking a vegan diet, but then they just deal with all these PETA assholes that are completely radicalized, and, they'll go and, do all those like fucking lame protests that they do where they, dress up like the animals, or they'll go into like grocery stores and things like that. That to me is obnoxious. And I don't speak for any of those people. I think it's very damaging to try to like shame somebody into doing anything. I think that the best way to be able to, a lot of my friends became vegans just because I would bring them to a restaurant, or just because I'd prepare some like really good vegan eats for them. And they're like, man, you inspired me to become a vegan. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's great. And I didn't do any sort of radicalized means in order to bring them to that platform. I just was a nice person. And,
I don't think those radical means ever in any cause bring anybody to the platform. Right.
No. Look at all the climate protesters that are just pissing everybody off because they're blocking. They did it around Christmas. I can't remember what airport it was, but they blocked everybody from
LAX. It was
LAX.
Yes.
Fucking assholes, man. Because it's like, there's people there that might actually agree with you.
And, the same could be said for the Palestinian protesters, right? The same could be said for Black Lives Matter. The same could be said, which brings us on to another interesting topic, right? Like, there's a lot of chaos going on in the world right now, right? We've got all this nonsense. We've got like the Just Stop Oil protesters all over the world sitting their entitled asses down in streets, and people are getting sick of it. I think it's amazing. I have a bit about the Palestinian stuff, right? Like, so look, first of all, I have no skin in that game. Okay.
Right.
Palestine and Israel. This is a conflict that's been going on for a long time that I have no skin in that
tribe adjacent, but I'm not like, I've never lived in the Middle East. Anyway, continue.
But like, so what I'm noticing is, my perspective is, look, the same people with the Palestinian flags causing a ruckus, the same Gen Z friggin' college kids that are out there making a big stink about this with the colonialism and all that stuff, are the same ones that had the black square on their Facebook page. They're the same ones that were out there supporting Black Lives Matter and protesting against the police and for a friggin' thug, criminal, drug addict that ended up dying of an overdose, right? So like, I'm starting to say and what it does to me is go, oh, all right, well, you're on that side. And it's unfortunate because I know I'm better than this, but like, well, clearly I'm going to be for Israel, right?
Right.
I also don't have anything in common with kind of Muslims. Like, I don't identify with that. Right? I grew up all Italians and Jews. I mean, I was raised Catholic, and I don't consider myself a Christian, but like, I definitely identify more with that aspect of society. So clearly I'm going to be on the Israel side of things, right?
Right.
If I have to choose, don't make me choose though. Why are you making me choose? Right. And that's what I think the problem is. And same with like the Just Stop Oil protesters. Like, what are you people doing? Like, it's like protesters complain about slavery and Black Lives Matter, doing it from a phone that's being made by Chinese petroleum children, right? Yeah. And everything's made with friggin' oil, right? Yeah. And so for me, they're all just useful idiots. Their virtues being played. They're being played for their virtue to further a cause that is kind of like a way of controlling humanity. And that's
100%.
The more spiritual I get, and the more spiritual I have gotten over the last 3-4 years, the more I feel like, oh, intuitively, I'm right. Like, I was right about COVID. I was, like, it was pretty clear that was just a means of controlling the population.
Totally.
It's pretty clear that EVs are the same thing, right? You want to get in your car?
Oh, yeah.
Electric vehicles, right? Like, it's, you want to be on a social credit system. This is the way to go. It's going to make it much easier for them to shut your car off because you use your, annual carbon allowance, or because you said something bad on Twitter and offended some mentally ill trans person, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So that's where I come from with this stuff right now. And I do, going back, I don't want to go back into it too hard, but like, I do see the same thing with the plant-based movement as far as like the political aspects of it right now. Right?
Sure. No, and I agree with you 100%. But, to comment on the whole Gaza-Palestine situation, where it's like, they're talking about like genocide. And, when I had Ezek on the podcast, he was saying that like Hamas was keeping a lot of the people. IDF would be like, okay, we're going to bomb this building in like 3 days. You got this amount of time to bring all your people out. And Hamas was holding those people there against their will. So when the IDF finally did attack, it was like, look at the atrocities that Israel has done to us. Look at the terrible things that they've done to us. And then it's also just, by nature of war, people get killed. It's not like, it's not intentional. It's just like they say, casualties of war. And so like the fact that these people are pushing like this whole genocide thing, to me is very, it's misleading, and it's not, it's not true for the most part.
Well, I see it I see the narrative as being part of a bigger plan to destabilize the West, right? It's like the same people. Then we can get into the border and all the essentially soldiers that are streaming over our border that are eventually going to take that eventually we're going to be fighting against. But I think that the people in the streets saying things like colonizers, it's only a matter of time before white men and white people, or like people who are in power, people who are, like us, are going to be seen as colonizers in the same regard. Right?
It's already happening.
It is already happening, but wait till it actually becomes a battle, which I think we're going to see in 2024. I think there's going to be war on this soil, and that kind of freaks me out a little bit.
Yeah. No, with 2024, either way that this election goes, I don't see good things happening in America, all across the board. From whatever political perspective you see, there's going to be some shit going down, like big time.
So, and how do you, on a spiritual level, navigate knowing that after all we've been through and kind of where you see it headed?
Well, I mean, like, my channel has kind of gone off like the political tip a little bit, and that's just because I do want to foster conversations with people all across the aisle. And when you take such a staunch position on something, I mean, I stand where I stand politically, and I've commented on it multiple times. And, you know, I don't recant any of those stances, but at the same time, I'm not out there to be, you know, an agitator or anything like that. From a spiritual perspective, I would say that, you know, okay, you need no further look than Soviet Russia with the devotees that were over there, the Hare Krishna devotees. They were thrown in jail for things that they were practicing, and this was under a socialist regime. So, you know, that does scare me. That does scare me. I mean, I think that, you know, when I moved back to North Carolina, I couldn't have been more happy to see Christians in my entire life, and I'm not a Christian. You know, I was just like,
Right. I
oh,
get
thank God, you know. But I do think that, you know, a lot of these movements come from a place of godlessness, and I think that's kind of their whole goal is to eliminate what they perceive as, you know, being a threat to their existence, you know, spirituality, you know, Christianity, what have you, you know, things that are characteristic of people in Western culture. And I think they just want to break that all down and, you know, just completely put us on, you know, they talk about like being like egalitarian and socialist and things like that, but it never works that way. It never works that way, you know, and it all comes from people that live very comfortably, you know, that I had this discussion the other day where it was like, you know, a lot of the, you know, latte slurping fucking people that are up in like, you know, Pacific Palisades and stuff like that are like, oh, you know, I think we should allocate our taxes to this and allocate it. Those motherfuckers get tax loopholes so that they're not ever going to have to pay any of those taxes. Meanwhile, the people that are suffering are, you know, your working class Joes, your blue collar people, things like that. People that grow your food. You know, like those are the people that are going to be affected by high taxation and things of that nature. And so it's like, yeah, of course you're going to advocate for it. You think you're virtue signaling, you think you're doing a good thing, but you're fucking, you know, you in the ivory tower are not going to be affected by it all, which is bullshit.
Right, absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. I also think that, like, you know, typically communism, you know, is about taking away your relationship to God and your devotion to the church and to your family and transferring it over to the state, right?
Yeah.
Like that is your new religion, is the government. And we see these people, you know, it blows my mind because liberals used to be about freedom and liberals used to be, you know, skeptical of the state. And something happened in the last 3-4 years where it's like they, you know, are rooting on oppressive regimes at this point.
Exactly. It's
they're
so
like,
weird.
oh yes, well, I've been working on a bit for a while about like even punk rockers, because we've seen it on the hardcore scene with all the BLM stuff and with all the COVID stuff. It's like, at what point, like I grew up punk rock, it was G.G. Allen shitting in his hand and throwing at the crowd. Like that's the kind of punk rock, that's punk rock, you know?
Yeah.
And like my punk rock friends were hard to hang out with because they didn't shower. Now they're telling you to wash your hands and take a vaccine and put on a mask. Like what is that about?
Yeah. And
it's
you
crazy.
know, it's interesting that you should mention the removal of God from the state. You know, okay, let's just talk about the Nazis, the National Socialist Workers Party. It's in the fucking name. Okay. You know, whenever Hitler took power, he kind of let the Roman Catholic Church in Germany do what they wanted. You know, like you could go into like religious schools, and churches and organizations, and there would be a picture of the Blessed Virgin Mary and Jesus and things like that. Fast forward to like, I think maybe a few years later, it was replaced with Hitler's picture, Der Führer, you know? And so it's like, that stuff is inevitable. That stuff is 100% inevitable because it gives people autonomy, for one, you know, like spiritual autonomy, like they're able to worship their own God and they're, you know, have their own belief structure and things like that. And so, you know, that's just another method to be able to take away that autonomy is to, you know, outlaw God and outlaw religion, you know, and it's scary. It's scary because it's happening right now. And it's so funny to me how so many people are against it. You know, like, okay, you can be an atheist all day long. I don't care. But there's actually a different branch of atheism called anti-theism, which is advocating for the destruction of all religious practices.
Right,
And
right.
I think that's kind of usurping anything that's going on with you know, atheists or agnostics. It's just like now they just actively hate, and they're going to do whatever, they're going to take whatever means necessary to be able to see that, you know, there's no God or no piety in any aspect of human life. And that's fucking scary.
And aren't we headed towards this, like, which I think what it's all about is really getting us in control, and then this transhumanist agenda, right? Where we're merging with AI, we're merging with technology. And I think the inevitable goal for the people in power, and this is something I've been talking about a lot lately because it just kind of came upon me as an epiphany recently, is that they're demons, right? These people in control are demons.
Yeah.
And if you're a demon, what would you want? You would want immortality in this physical realm. Why? Well, because when you go to the next level, you're fucking eternal damnation. Like, you're not, like, there's nothing to look forward to. Of course you want to stay here for as long as possible. Of course you want immortality. So I'm starting to see that anybody who's afraid of death is probably a demon, you know, like, in that regard, or so anybody working actively to make it so that we can live forever in this realm. And I think that in order to do that, you have to kind of merge our physical reality with like an AI, which is also kind of a physical thing in a way, right? Technology is physical in this realm as far as if you're separating it out from spirituality.
Right? And that's one thing, you know, that with the trans movement, it goes beyond gender and sexual identity. And it's like you mentioned, transhumanism, where it's like we're artificially creating people, you know, more or less. We're modifying the human body. And it's a bigger agenda than just some sort of identity-based politics, and and then it's scary.
And it's also like, let's take away your physical ability to reproduce and have the family and like all the other stuff. Like, there's no trans person that taking hormone blockers that's ever going to have children, ever. It's just not going to happen. You're non-binary. You're not going to have children. You're not going to reproduce, which is kind of like just our evolutionary purpose on this earth in this reality is to just reproduce. That's what we do. That's what animals do. They keep their species going. And you know, it's crazy to me that people don't see that. People who are supposedly anti-establishment don't see the agenda. Right. It's uncanny.
and you know, I will also say that I've kind of had a change on the position of like the manosphere and like the red pill community, in that I don't think I think it's almost the same coin, but the different side of like, oh, well, you know, I'm a tough guy. I don't need no fucking woman I don't need no woman simp, you know, to simp for, or I'm not going to spend money on, I ain't getting married ever. It's the same thing almost as like the feminist movement, you know, where it's like,
I agree.
It's advocating not having children or not starting a nuclear family, but they're veiling it in this whole like, you know, oh, like this fake alpha male like machismo type thing, you know. And don't get me wrong,
trad wives and all this other shit,
right? Well, and don't get me wrong. Well, no, I mean, I think that's what men should aspire for. I think that there are some positives to that movement, and that you need to make sure that your ship is secure and able to float before like undertaking like a family and things like that. You got to have like a career, you got to have things like that. And you want to be able to have the best possible spousal relationship that you can. You know, if a girl has been with like 300 fucking dudes or whatever, like her sexual value and currency is a little bit lower, much like, you know, a woman that has children. She is at somewhat of a disadvantage because there's not a lot of men that are going to want to undertake, you know, raising somebody else's child. I mean, that's essentially what it's doing, you know. And I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of beautiful women through the Hare Krishna movement, and it's a little bit harder for them to get married off because they do have children, you know. And it's like, not every man wants to undertake that. Not every man is able to undertake that. So I totally see where a lot of the red pill community is coming from with their beliefs and their ideologies. Unfortunately, I think you can take it too far in the other direction towards like, I'm just not going to have kids. I'm not going to get married. Fuck it, you know?
Well, I think that's the issues are the extremes, right? Like that's just, and they're the loudest, right? The extremes
Right.
are loudest. They're the ones that want to scream the most. They're the ones that get the most attention. They're the ones that go viral. It's like that, like always with that friggin' whatever podcast where it's like you got these guys shaming women, talking about relationships. Like I don't even think any of those guys have been in long-term relationships. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but you know, it's like I find it funny that so many people who have no experience with relationships want to tell people how relationships are supposed to be, right? Or like, you know, that, but in the end, like you're saying, they're shaming these women, right? And they're standing up for this alpha, which to me is a fake alpha, right? Like, because a real alpha is somebody who can be okay being vulnerable, right?
A real alpha doesn't say that they're an alpha either.
100%.
Yeah.
Like I had that guy yesterday or the day before yesterday in Huntington Beach. I don't know if you saw my post on Facebook. But like I'm walking down by the beach over there on PCH and just doing my thing. And this, you know, girl walks by, probably 17 or 18 years old, but like, you know, yoga pants, smoking body, just curvy, you know, the whole bit. And she's walking, you know, young girl, definitely in her, you know, definitely not more than 20 years old. Well, I go with their friends and I see this guy like do a triple take. You know, he wasn't like a street guy or anything. He does a triple take and then he like starts rushing towards her like, hey, excuse me, girl, you're so beautiful. You're so beautiful. Why don't you let me take you out? Why don't you let me take you out? And she's like, you know, excuse me. And then like, you know, when I saw him do the double take, I'm like, this guy's, something's off here, you know?
Yeah.
And so I kind of stepped over and then he's like, oh, you fucking bros don't understand. You beautiful women. You guys don't appreciate shit. And then he like went to go grab her by the shoulder. At which point I stepped in between them because I saw what was going to happen. I think he was just going to yell at her, but he was going to grab her and like, because she had turned around and started to try and walk away.
Yeah.
And so I just stepped between them. I'm like, bro, it's because you're a creep. You're being creepy.
Yeah.
And this guy's like, oh, fuck you. You beta males are the problem. Like, so this is what I saw. So he was your typical incel, right? Guy who gets mad at women because he can't get laid or whatever.
Right.
And then, you know, he's like, you're a beta male. You guys are the problem. You're the ones that give these women all the fucking control. And I was like, bro, I had to step up and be like, bro, do you want to see if I'm a fucking beta or not? Like, I'll show you, bro, right now. And then when he saw I was ready to go, he scurried off like into the distance, like real fast, you know, like he was definitely the beta.
So would it be safe to say that he is somebody that is affected by toxic masculinity?
He's probably affected by those podcasts, by the Andrew Tates, like in a negative way, right? Like I don't think Andrew Tate has nothing to offer, but I think it's like it all gets lost in interpretation, right?
Sure.
And if you're like this incel guy seeing, you know, watching like an Andrew Tate video or watching like these whatever podcasts with these guys who are out there like shaming these women because they're attractive and on OnlyFans and all that stuff, right? That's that extreme. And that content isn't inherently toxic. Its interpretation can be.
Sure.
Right? So that's where I see everything gets lost in interpretation. Right.
Have you ever heard of the concept of the Sigma male?
Yes, this is the new one, right?
Yeah.
The Sigma male is kind of like a stoic, right? Like,
yeah, it's got qualities of like all the best qualities of like alpha, beta. And, you know, I actually, you know, a friend kind of turned me on to that, like was showing me videos of that. And I was like, holy shit, I check a lot of these boxes in that, you know, I get labeled a creep sometimes because I am aloof and because I don't typically engage in those scenarios. And I will say that, you know, I think that society, you look at like the Me Too movement, right? The Me Too movement has made it so that a lot of these men, even good-natured men that just may, hey, you know, like, let's just say this guy wasn't as obnoxious as he was and was just like, hey, you know, I really think you're beautiful. I'd, you know, like to take your number and see if you'd like to go hang out sometime. I don't think that in itself is toxic or bad or anything like that. but the Me Too movement had just made it so that men are petrified now. Men, like, it doesn't even matter like what you say or do. If that woman is offended or, feels like threatened or whatever, she can say whatever the fuck she wants about you. And now we've got this whole, social media to be able to like put somebody on blast or whatever. And then it just ruins their life. So these men are petrified and able to do anything, And I also kind of come from that position in that I've dealt with a lot of toxic women in my life. And I've gotten to the point now where I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to stay aloof. I'm just not going to say anything. And I'm just going to do my thing and, kind of test the waters based on, mood and vibes and things like that. But yeah, it's like this, like guy that's kind of just aloof for anything and kind of moves in his own direction and doesn't really, and I was like, man, I really identify with a lot of those aspects. I think that it's very, it's something that hasn't really been explored in like, male archetypes.
Well, it is more now because I've been seeing it being talked about, the Sigma male. I've been noticing in my YouTube feed and stuff like that. Like, start watching like the whatever podcast clips and stuff like that. Then all of a sudden there's like the Sigma male. And for me, it's like, I think that we're talking about two extremes, right? You got the guy who's creepy over here, and then you got maybe the girl who's toxic because just for talking to her. We've also empowered with those movements and with like social media and stuff like that. Like, women have options, man. Even ugly fat women think that they're 10s now. We've seen this time and time again, and it's like they think that there's some prize, and they don't have to have anything else other than tits and ass to offer. As far as like,
I tell you what, I Tinder linked with this girl that I think was probably at best like a 5 or a 6 one time. She was really cool. She was, she was moderately attractive. And then she showed me like her inbox on Tinder, flooded. She wasn't like a fucking, Kim Kardashian or one of these like super like beautiful women or anything like that. She was just kind of average, but just completely flooded. And then conversely, you take somebody that, might be a moderately attractive guy and maybe gets like 5 or 6 in his Tinder inbox, because, living in those cities, you do have so many options. And it just makes it like a girl can be like, well, I don't like the color of his hair. Swipe left, It's something so superficial as that.
Well, and then it even happens within the relationship itself. You meet a girl, maybe you match on Tinder, you have a great date, and she's like, oh, yeah, this guy's the one. And then like we're taking away flaws and growth in relationships, right? Because when I met my wife and we started dating, there were things that annoyed me about her, and then there were things that annoyed her about me, because we're two different humans trying to coexist in a relationship. And it's really easy when your inbox is filled to just go, oh, I'm not dealing with this.
Right.
Kick that guy to the curb. You've got options, right? But a true relationship, a true spiritual path with twin flames growing it together has to be to maybe go, yeah, man, all right, I want to coexist with this woman. So maybe, one of the things my wife used to drive her crazy is like when I get frustrated, I'm like, God damn it. Like, it would drive her nuts. If I say, God damn it, like, it would drive her crazy. And I'm like, yeah, that's just who I am. I'm allowed to be frustrated. But like, there's some level of coexisting that has to happen. So you start to grow and work through some of those things and become a better person. And so does she work through some of those things and become a better person. That's where when you have this, which I say it's a false notion, because you're going to have that with anybody, but you have this false notion of all these options.
Yeah.
You don't ever get that chance to grow through the relationship, which I think is a big part of it.
And with Tinder too, and especially in a big city like LA, somebody like me that's kind of just an average Joe or whatever, like I'm in competition with actors, entertainers, musicians, athletes, investment bankers, like you really, and I say this too, like, because, I didn't want to accept this reality for a long time, but like your status does matter. Like who you are in the world and like who you, what, financial status, height, things like that. I didn't want to accept that, like, oh, you're just going to love me for me type thing, like those things are important. And that's why, I do agree with the red pill community, and it's important to get your money right. It's important to, stay in shape, do things like that. Because while they are superficial attributes, they are going to help you in the long run. I mean, height, I'm a short guy. There's nothing I can change about that. And I fucking accept that. It's fine. Like I've just, 6 foot tall, got to make six figures, things like that. I'm like, I ain't that guy. So I just got to do the best with what I've got, and only make sure that I'm performing 100% in all aspects, accept the things we cannot change, and have the courage and wisdom to change the things that we can, like the old 12-step mantra, And so, yeah, I can't change my height, but can I change my financial status? Absolutely. Can I change my personality, like you said, to be able to kind of compromise in a relationship? I try not to get angry anymore about anything. I used to fucking be like a powder keg when it came to certain things, but now I kind of take a breath, and I'm like, okay, let's take a step back here, and even in just my normal daily conversations, I just try to be cognizant of the fact that I might not always be right. And that whole, in Krishna consciousness, the whole defending position where you're either taking a really strong stand on something or whatever, it's stronger than the desire to mate, which is crazy, but
that makes sense.
You think about it, it's like it's you just want to be right, and it's like, well, maybe I'm not right, and that I think comes with age and maturity. That was something that I didn't want to admit for a long time, is like, I might not be right, and if this thing genuinely pisses this person off, well, how do I kind of redivert, and how do I kind of change that? Or maybe if it's something I like doing, like I mentioned, I started playing video games again, like after a 10-year dormancy of playing video games. But if my spouse doesn't like that and wants me to spend more time with them, it's like, well, how about if I play for an hour? And how about if I play from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. and then at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. we can watch a show or something like that. That to me was a huge paradigm shift in my life, to where I'm like, I don't always have to have things my way.
Well, yeah, acceptance without judgment, right? Like that's, I think, the biggest key. And it does relate right back to being like a Sigma male, or like stoicism, right? Like, okay, this is reality. I don't like it. You're allowed to be angry. Mm-hmm. It's like, but are you going to let that anger control your emotions and like your then behavior as a result? And
right.
We all, I think, know that like reacting from a place of anger is never effective to meet our ends, right? That we are trying to have, right? It's not effective.
If somebody does try to trigger you and make you angry, though, this is one thing I've been looking into a lot, is like narcissistic personality disorder, like borderline personality disorder, to where people try to weaponize things against you. Like, say, here was one with me. I couldn't stand when my roommate would bring in different coat hangers. I don't know if it's like an OCD thing or something like that, but I was like, dude, this just makes me crazy, because when I look in my closet, it's like all these different styles of coat hangers, and it just, like, my brain needed to just see one uniform thing in there. And so, in order to piss me off, they just would just fucking throw random hangers in there, like just to be an asshole, And I'm like, does that come from a place? Because I know your wife is in psychology. Are you familiar with like narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder?
So narcissism. My wife used to exclusively, when she first was in private practice, she exclusively did dialectical behavior therapy, which is the effective treatment for borderline personality disorder. And I would say like narcissism is a trait of a borderline. So yeah. I mean, in situations like that, like dude, if you saw my closet, you'd be like, wow, every color, every hanger is exactly the same, and they're all facing the same way. All my pants, like, it is kind of like some kind of like control issue, right? In situations like that, like, what can you change, right? Like, okay, right. It's an interpretation, right? Like, because that's where we're at. Like in borderline personality, dialectical behavior therapy, it's a lot of emotion regulation, distress tolerance, like non-judgment. Like those are like the what you're trying to accomplish, right? Being
Well,
able
I'm
to
not
regulate your
saying
emotions.
I'm not saying I'm afflicted by this, but I think
No, I
that,
understand what you're saying.
okay. So yeah, I mean, like somebody just does something to fucking get under your skin, like,
Yeah, they're like gaslighting you, or they're like, trying to provoke a response. So in your situation, noticing that, if that's truly what they're doing, which is an interpretation, are they actually trying to provoke a response? They may just not give a shit about hangers and just throw them in there and not be doing that, right? Like
right.
that's your interpretation. But like, I would go right into, what can I change about this situation? Well, I could have a conversation with them like, hey man, it really does trigger me a little bit when the hangers aren't all the same way. I know it's a quirk, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Or go in there, take those hangers out, replace them all, set it up your way, and try to make a statement there.
And
Right.
that's what I did initially. I was like, look, man, this is, kind of something that I'm just real weird about. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'll buy you the hangers. I said, I will buy you the hangers, to, and then just out of spite, he fucking like threw a bunch of just normal wire hangers in there on the floor. So I was like, man, fuck you, like that. I said, fuck you, motherfucker,
Right. So you let him control your emotions.
Well, I threw it out. I didn't say anything
Well, right.
about it. I just took them and I just fucking threw them in the trash, But yeah, no, I mean, I think that comes from a place of almost sadism, where people like to see other people in distress, and I fucking hate that, because I've never, I don't think, possessed that bone in my body ever.
Right. But all you can focus on is your bones, right? Like you can't control other people. And that's, I think, where the differentiation is, and it makes for a better life. It's like, okay, man, that lease is up in 6 months. What can I control? Maybe I can get a new roommate, or maybe I can go and move into a smaller place by myself, or like, and the growth is going to happen in tolerating that. Wow, this person is really not that's a judgment, right? Is it effective to say that they're an asshole, or is it effective to just say that person and I don't jive? Whatever their motivation is on them.
Yeah.
All I can do is control my reaction to that and my interpretation of that. Because one interpretation is that they're an asshole. Another interpretation is that they're insecure. There's so many different interpretations, that they're insecure about their own inability, or maybe it was the way they were raised, their mom, or maybe they're not, you know what I mean? Like there's all this interpretations, and that's where you start your control of the situation,
right?
Is where you interpret their actions. Like my wife used to tell me that, say you're sitting on your front steps, sitting on your stoop out in front of your yard, and one of your good friends is walking down the street. And you're like, hey, man, what's up? And they just totally ignore you. And they just keep walking. You're like, what the fuck did I do to that guy? There's 1,000 different interpretations. There's so many different interpretations.
Maybe he didn't hear you.
Maybe he didn't hear you. Maybe he just was so deep in thought, he heard you, and he just like, he's got something going on. We don't know. His dog could have just died. Like, all these interpretations.
Yeah.
Right? And our insecurities are typically going to be what drives our interpretation, I think, right?
Yep.
I would say like, oh,
what did
man,
I do?
Yeah, like I feel, like, oh man, what did I do? Oh, and you start going back in time, like, oh, fuck, that one day I said that about his dog and da 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 da, or whatever.
Yeah. And I had that exact scenario happen to me in Hollywood one time, where apparently I passed my buddy on the street, and he was like, oh dude, he's like, what's up, man? He hit me up like days later. He's like, I saw you walking in Hollywood and you just didn't even say anything to me. And I was like, oh, I had my headphones in. I didn't hear you,
Right.
and I didn't see you. I apologize. It's like, it wasn't anything personal,
Yeah. But to get to that point where he even brought it up to you, how much obsessing did he probably do in his head?
Probably
how much worry, how much anxiety? And we can't get that back, right? That takes over our control, right? Instead of just going, all right, well, when I see him, I'll ask him what's going on. Like, I bet you there was some obsession going on there. There was some stewing.
I think so. Yeah, probably.
And that's all based on interpretation, right?
Yeah.
Oh, he didn't hear me, right? And
I just had to be like situation. That. Like, look, man, like, you're still my friend. I didn't, mean anything by it. I really just you know, when I walk through Hollywood, I like to avoid a lot of the bullshit. And so I just put my headphones in and just fucking go, you know, and like, I really didn't hear you or see you or anything like that. He was filming a movie and I was like, oh, you know, he said, oh yeah, see if you want to step in and make a cameo and stuff. And I was like, I didn't even notice you, man. Don't take
But
it.
how sideways could that have went? If like, what if he didn't approach you? What if he just felt like, oh, fuck him, he wants to ignore me when I was going to put him in a movie too, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't speak to you for 6 months, and now you guys are on the outs, right? Like all this different stuff could have happened because our interpretations and our thoughts. Then that's what relates. It happens instantaneously, and then that relates to our emotion. And then once we feel that emotion, all bets are off, as far as I'm concerned, as far as how our behavior is going to be.
Have you ever read the book, The Language of Letting Go?
No, but I have heard of The Language of Letting Go.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about it.
It's something that I have a hard time doing, because even if I feel slighted or, just kind of like wronged or anything like that, especially if it's, it's real easy for me to walk away from scenarios. It's incredibly easy for me. I've done it before. I'm like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm out of here, But it's like, let's take like a workplace scenario when it's like you have to deal with certain people every day. Like I remember I worked with this one woman and all she did was bitch and complain and just whine. And I was like, fucking God, this is irritating. And nobody wanted to work alongside her for this reason. And then I just remember one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go over there and help her. And her whole demeanor almost shifted because of that. She was like, and I wasn't holding in any resentment. I was just like, yeah, you're kind of a bitch, whatever. But, you're probably going through some shit that I don't even know about, like maybe, you got some family issues at home. Maybe you've got some financial struggles or something like that. And so for me to be able to just be like, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to, like, it was at a grocery store. I was like, I'm going to go help you like with what you need to do. And it's completely like complete shift. The whole energy was like changed because of that.
Well, because you conjured up empathy, and then by your actions, you validated her existence and her situation. And that's mostly what people want. They just want to be validated,
Yeah.
Like people don't even want to be apologized to because it has nothing to do with that person. It has to do with you when you say it, right? It has to do with, right? People want to be validated. People want to hear like, oh man, wow, that sounds like it's really frustrating. They want to hear that their emotional response to things is valid,
Yeah.
And I think that to like, that's one of the things when I learned about NVC, nonviolent communication, right? As a bouncer and as a security guard and doing all the things that I did, like conflict resolution was a big part of my life. And, a lot of that, and NVC is a lot related to what my wife does as far, or what she used to do with borderlines anyways.
Yeah. And that actually taught me a lot of like patience and not losing my patience because, sometimes people will, oh, what are you, a fucking 2-bit security guard, whatever. And then like, you really have to be like, I'm not letting you in here because you're not wearing shoes. You are wearing sandals and we don't allow sandals in this establishment. I said, and these are the rules of the club. I don't make the rules. I'm just relaying the message, and like, I'm like, it's not a personal thing. Just go and get some shoes and come back and I'll let you in,
Well, what is even more effective than that with the validation piece is like being able to like, empathize and put yourself in that person's shoes and go, in this case, sandals, but like, being able to go, wow, okay, what could this person really, getting curious, right? That's where empathy comes from. Getting curious, right? If you can get curious about this person, I mean, sometimes you may have to go all the way back to when they were an infant and they were an innocent being to really get curious about what could be going on with this person. But like, I used to throw guys out of bars and it's like, it's like, yeah, hey man, bartender said you were falling down. I got to get you out of here. That's one way of doing it. That person's probably going to be a little bit defensive, right?
Yeah.
The other way to do it is like, hey bro, come here, man. Look, man, I know you're here with your friends right now. I get it. Like, I know you're, it's probably not, going to be a fun experience for you, but I get it, man. I get it. I would be totally embarrassed too.
Yeah.
I gotta ask you to leave. It's out of my control, right? So as soon as they feel understood and heard, and like that they're valid and that their experience is real. Like, it's like, I mean, how many bouncers even think of that? How many bouncers go, oh, damn, this guy's here with 3 of his friends. One of them is like a hot single chick that maybe he's trying to get with her. Maybe and then now they're all having a good time, but he's a little too tossed on his way to the bathroom. He fell into the jukebox.
Yeah.
Totally mean. But about once the bartender says, get that guy out of here, he's overserved, I have no choice.
But then
how am I going to get him to listen to me?
Yeah, you don't want to embarrass him in front of his girl and like make him look bad and stuff like that.
Right.
You take him aside and you be like, "Hey, man, can you, here's the skinny right now. Yeah, you've had a little bit too much to drink. Just how about you come back at another time? Something like that." One big one with me was always feet on the table. And I don't know who, like, I wanted, so many times I wanted to go be like, I don't know who fucking raised you like this. But in the back of my mind, this is something I learned through, just talking to people. I think it was, what's that book? Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Well, instead of saying, hey, man, take your shoes off the fucking table, you go up to him and be like, hey, how you doing tonight, sir? Would you be so kind to take your feet off the table? Like, would you do us all a favor and take your feet off the table? Then it's like, this is for the mutual benefit of everyone. It doesn't make it sound, vindictive or like you're targeting for them for a specific reason or whatever. It's more of like a courteous and kind way of saying it. If they don't listen like 2 or 3 times, though, that's when you really gotta ramp.
Sure.
Up,
And I've already warned you. I've already told you. I've already let you know this is inappropriate. And your interpretation as the door guy, that guy could have just had surgery and he really needs to stretch out his legs. Maybe he's got sciatica. But most bouncers would be like, this rude motherfucker. Dude, get your fucking feet off the table. You ain't at home. Right? But we don't really know what's going on. Or sometimes I put my feet up and I don't even realize I'm doing it. It's like, hey, bro, you look awfully comfortable, bro.
That's a good one.
Right? That's exactly how I would approach it. Like, bro, you look super comfortable, bro. You're in a bar, right? Come on, man. Everybody else is trying to hang out too. We can't have you with your feet up on the table, man. Come on, please.
I had to really lay it out to some, it was a group of like 5 Mexican dudes one time, and they just went in and kind of brazenly sat in this area where it was private reservations or private tables, and I'd be like, hey guys, how you doing tonight? Just want to let you know, this is for private reservations. So, if you're interested, I can put you in touch with, one of our servers over here and they can get you set up like that. And they were like, nah, we're just going to stay here like that. And I said, well, I'm sorry, sir, you can't do that. And he said, why like that? And I stepped in right to him and I looked at him in the eye and I go, because that's the rules of this establishment like that. And he kind of got like, oh, like fucking, I try to approach the situation, tactfully and courteously. And then they just, they decided to ramp it up more. And I was like, okay, all right, we're doing this. All right.
I'm not saying it works every time, but it's a good way to approach it at first, especially, I will say as a bouncer for 20 some years that, culturally, there are all sorts of different variables, right? Especially when you get in the group setting, right? Like, I've dealt with like, this, it's like, sometimes you got to pick the right guy out of the group, the leader, right?
Yeah.
Usually the quietest guy that is, in charge of the situation. Like, it's interesting. And everything is so nuanced in every situation. And then sometimes you got to grab a motherfucker by the throat and throw him out the door. Like, sometimes it gets to that.
Yeah. Been there, man.
And sometimes it's like, look, bro, I know you guys want to sit here. I know it doesn't seem to make any sense to you, but what if you go over here and I buy you guys around? Or like, I've done that. What are you drinking, bro? Why don't you come over here? We'll get you over here at one of these other tables. Let me go grab you a drink. Let me go grab you another drink. And like, fuck, the bouncers bought me a drink. You could take that situation that could have been really bad and turned it into this like amazing guest experience for them.
Yeah. I think he's an expert in doing that. I sometimes, well, yeah, they can be, sometimes I watch these videos and like, there was this girl that was, she was getting pulled over and she's like, he's like, hey, ma'am, have you had a little bit to drink tonight? And she goes, well, I don't want you to call me ma'am because I'm non-binary. And he's like, okay, well, what would you like me to call you? And she really didn't
I think
have
I
an
saw
answer.
this video.
Yeah. And it was funny because she's like, I deal with a lot of social anxiety. He's like, oh, so do I.
No, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
So she was trying everything she could to use this victim card to get out of essentially what was just a DUI, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was an over
she was
beverage
under the
person.
influence. Yeah.
And,
have you ever been in oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, have you ever been in a scenario to where you did try to diffuse the situation as tactfully and respectfully as possible, and then it just went sideways?
100%.
Yeah.
I've been in many of them. I actually have one of them on video. Maybe I'll throw it in the podcast here and show it. But
I was going to say, what was the scenario?
I can be. The scenario was I was at the Lucky 13 in Alameda, which was my home bar where I built my security company from. So I was the head bouncer there, and it was a Sunday afternoon at 3:00, and it was a street fair, family friendly street fair. Literally outside our door was like a Beatles tribute band playing on a stage in the streets right outside. Mm-hmm. Fun as fun. One of the things was that they're serving drinks all over out at other bars and everything. So we just, legal thing. We can't have your outside drinks in the bar. So, and she was an African-American girl, walks in with her friends, comes in the door, and, she gets past me because I'm like talking to another group because it's busy, right? It's crazy. It's one of me. And so I had to go check IDs. So I go over to check their IDs. I check, and I see the girl's got like a frozen margarita. And I'm just like super polite. I'm in the greatest mood. I'm like, I ask all the girls for their IDs. They show me their IDs. And I'm like, okay, one real quick thing, girl. I can't have that drink inside the bar. So can you take it outside and finish it? Or and before I even had a chance, she goes, don't talk to me. You're rude. And looked at her friends. And I was like, okay, 1 second. So I'm like, okay, all right. A couple other guys walk in. I check their IDs. I give it a second. I was like, okay, so I actually really need you to take that drink outside. And then she's like, don't fucking start yelling at me. And I was like, grab it out of her hand. Like she's got the death grip going too.
Yeah.
I grab it out of her. I grab her wrist and pinch it a little bit so I can pull the drink out of her hand. I take it and she's horrified at this point. I walk over to the front door. And at this point, I'm being really nice because I'm setting it outside the door, right in the corner. So it's outside. And now I'm about to walk back and tell her, hey girl, I know you wanted that drink. It's outside. It's safe. Like when you're ready to go, you can grab it. I don't even get those words out of my mouth. And she's like, what the fuck do you think? She starts screaming at me. I'm like, okay, now I'm not going to be nice about the drink. So I literally just walked away from her and go back to the front door. I grab the drink and throw it in the trash. Not dramatically. She didn't even see me do it. She didn't know I was being nice about it. She just knew I took it because she didn't want to listen to me.
Yeah.
The bartender, Samantha, she's like, what's up with that girl? This girl, like you can see it in the video too, because this video is so long. You can see it in the video. She's like upset. She can't believe it. She's bitching about me to her friend. She's in an uproar, right?
Yeah.
And the bartender's like, what's up with that? What's up with that girl over there? I'm like, she's upset. I'm just going to let it roll for right now. We don't need any drama. I'll let her do her thing. She said she's going to leave soon, so we'll just let it play out. I don't want a bunch of drama. So you can see in the video, 5 minutes goes by. I'm like at the front door. She's over there huffing and puffing to her friends. She can't believe her friends are like rubbing her back and stuff. She's like totally unreasonably upset. So I'm like checking IDs at the door. And then one of the things I have to clean up the tables, get all the bar glasses every now and then. I'd go and I'd walk through the bar and grab the glasses and put them in the bar. So I'm wiping down some tables and I go, and I get to the table where she's standing, like in the middle of the bar. And I turn away from him so we don't engage. And she runs out in front of me and she's got like a drink from our bar in her hand. And then she she goes and directly just steps in my path, like, as I had totally tried to avoid her. And she's like, "You gonna take this drink too, you sucker?" And I was like, "You know what? You can go." And I pointed to the front door. And when I did, she smacked me in the head with the glass.
Ooh.
And she starts fucking trying to fight me. And I just, grab her like, and just kind of like a football player, try to like bulldoze her out the door. And as I'm bulldozing her like out the door, I get almost to the door, and this like really drunk borracho Mexican dude jumps in between us, and he's like, "That's a woman. What are you doing?" And I'm like, got blood in my eyes, and I could taste it from the fucking. She hit me like right here in the. I had to get like glued and stitched or whatever.
Oh fuck.
And so now this guy's between us. She's like screaming at me, like calling me out and all this shit. And then Samantha's Florida old school, like fucking white girl that just don't give a fuck. Sam jumps up over the bar, grabs her, throws her outside, and they just get in a fucking throwdown. They're exchanging blows in front of like old people and kids, like this street fair vibe. They're just exchanging blows. And then finally Sam gets like 2 on her. The girl falls, and Sam goes to grab, and then the girl just takes off running down the street. And I come barreling out the front door with blood covered like a professional wrestler in a steel cage match. And I'm like, "Stop that girl," because she's taking off. And then there were these cops down the street.
Yeah.
And then and I owned the company, so like I had door guys at like all the different bars down the street.
Yeah.
And so like one of the guys at the other bar like grabbed the cops and goes, "Yeah, that girl right there." And so like all these people are involved, and the cops come over and they walk up to her and they're like, "Put your hands behind your back." She's like, "Fuck you, you fucking pig!" And she swings at him.
Oh god.
That was it. They took her to the ground. They cuffed her. They shackled her fucking feet. They hog-tied her, carried her to the car, put her in the back. Like, it was off the hook, dude.
I wonder if she realizes any of it was worth it at all.
So, dude, it's not over yet. So she goes to jail. Mind you, I had just started my company, but that was the bar I started my company from. And one of the things when I started my company, I told the owner, Dan, I'm like, "Bro, you need cameras in this place. You need no cameras." Thank God, like 6 weeks before, he got cameras installed.
Oh, good.
But he didn't have the one out the front door, so we don't get good video of Sam and her fighting, which was awesome, by the way. Sam's just Florida white trash. She didn't give a fuck. But so in the end, she tried to like press charges on me and stuff, right? And you're talking like this yuppie mixed black girl from Alameda. She wasn't drunk. She was probably off her meds or something.
Oh, okay.
She wasn't drunk, but like they tried to say that I used force and but then I had hired a lawyer, and all this stuff, and my lawyer took the video camera, and her family hired this guy, I forget his name, but he had just won like a $20 million abusive power suit against the Oakland police for somebody.
Oh,
like he was a big deal. And my lawyer sent over the videos, and then a couple of days later, that lawyer called my lawyer and goes, "I can look at these videos all day long. What does your guy want?" Like there was just no denying it. Like I couldn't have been more patient with her. And she threw the first blow, and she smacked me in the head with the glass. And so, they took me away in an ambulance just to, go get me checked out, because it was like really close. Like it was like she was trying to take my fucking eye out, bro. Another couple inches, like 2 inches down, I might be blind in one eye today.
Holy shit.
It was wild. So I ended up getting like all my medical bills paid and everything, and I got like $8,000 restitution from her in the end.
Wow.
And she was supposed to do like 6 months. She was facing 6 months, but then they pleaded down to like she did like 60 days in Santa Rita County Jail up in Oakland, which probably was no fun for her.
Probably not.
So,
Probably not.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did 60 days and $8,600 restitution.
Holy shit! I definitely got to see this video now.
No, yeah, I have it. I'll send it to you, or when I play with this.
Yeah.
This recording, maybe I'll throw it in there afterwards or something. Or,
nice.
But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to talk about some stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I would say like, let's, we got about another 10 minutes here. So
Okay.
I got to start getting going. So
So you and
yeah,
I
let's
were
talk about stand up.
so you and I were talking about the whole Matt Rife TikTok phenomenon and how there's a lot of people on social media that are kind of berating him because for whatever X, Y reason, and that you were kind of, stepping in to kind of defend the guy. And where do you
Yeah,
think a lot of this animosity and hostility stems from these naysayers towards Matt Rife?
it's just envy, you know? I mean, as far as like stand-up comedians go, and especially here in LA, it's very competitive. I mean, you could see it happen anytime somebody gets an opportunity that maybe they want or they covet, they just start to berate people. I mean, it's, LA, it's a very competitive vibe. And I would say like, not everybody, because like, I would say like 80% of the comedians that I personally know that haven't really established themselves, they all want fame, right? There's a very, very select few like myself who my only goal is to be undeniably funny and to maybe be able to make a career out of doing that, right?
Sure.
And by a modest career, just enough to survive.
Same with
You know?
me, man.
If I can make $100,000 a year touring the world and doing cruises and doing casinos, and nobody in mainstream society had ever heard of me, but I can make people laugh and I have rooms filled with people to see me.
Mhm.
That's all I need,
That's a win. Yeah.
And everybody wants their Netflix special. It's really, it's kind of sad because I feel like you're in it for the wrong reasons, and a lot of people don't reach those heights. You're never going to reach those. It's like kind of like a manifestation thing, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to be really, really happy. Like I feel like I've made it. Why? Because I'm performing stand-up comedy in the greatest market for stand-up comedy and entertainment in the world, right? I'm in LA. It's like I don't have the TikTok followers. I don't have all that. And so I feel like a lot of people are want to use those platforms to circumvent the work and what it really takes to get there. Because it's just like being in a band. Like, it's like you're out there. If you're going to make more money in a cover band, but like to be an original band and play what you feel and you love and go out, it is a thankless thing to do. Stand-up comedy is the same way. It's thankless,
Well, and I've also noticed that consistency is key. Just keep going at it, and then eventually, it's one of those things where people be like, "Wow, he's been doing this for so long." Even if you don't, like you said, reach that level of mainstream success, you'll have this like longevity, and you'll also have this. I think you'll be finely tuned at what you're doing. And that's something with me, like, I've mentioned this on other podcasts before, like Johnny Carson was like a huge inspiration for me. Like I used to watch the Tonight Show all the time with Johnny Carson and be like, man, I want to do that someday. I want to be that guy. I want to be like, have people on my show and like interview them and do all that stuff. And I mean, I'm doing it, like I'm doing it now. I think if I only had one thing to change, it would be, I only got to do a handful of in-person like interviews. I think that those flow so much more organically, and that it's, that's kind of the whole model that he had him, Jay Leno, Conan, all those guys. That's where I think if I had one thing that I would want to be able to do consistently, it would be in that format. But, simultaneously, it's like, okay, yeah, I get to talk to all my favorite musicians. I get to talk to, people that I've looked up to for a long time and that have inspired me, and I'm like, what more could I ask for? Of course I'd want to be, get some, like you said, get some sort of sustenance from that and just be able to continue to do that. I think that's another goal, is to just continue to do that and maybe only that, and have that be like the breadwinner. Like that's what brings in my money, which I mentioned I monetize my channel, so it's starting to get there. I've been doing it for 3 years now, and I'm really starting to be pleased with the results. And at the same time, don't be attached to the results. Like if you're failing, if you're failing, or you're like with this Matt Rife situation, if you're not doing as well as somebody, well, just keep doing it and keep getting out there and keep getting better, and you'll be on the same level. You might be better, like you might be a flash in the pan.
Well, like, I think sometimes you can rush that process. And by rushing that process, because you get this TikTok notoriety, and he's a great crowd work guy, but I thought his special sucked. I thought the material, the on his latest Netflix special was hacky. It wasn't, it didn't feel like it was well rehearsed. It feels like maybe he could have used another year before he actually did his Netflix special, And you see a lot of guys like Tony Hinchcliffe, who's one of the funny, the Kill Tony podcast and stuff. Go watch his first special. It's trash. It just is.
Yeah.
And he'll admit it. Like, he knows it.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready to put out a special yet. But
yeah,
because of his relationship with Rogan and things like that, he got the special.
Sure.
And it's trash. And I personally don't want something out there I'm not proud of. In that, if it's going to be out to that mass amount of people, like, it better be good.
Right. Yeah, I got to do a really, really awesome interview with a country musician and actor. He was in Walk the Line. His name was Waylon Payne. And I never aired the episode just because I was unhappy with the sound quality. You couldn't really hear anybody. I didn't have the mics configured correctly. And I just, I want to be happy with what I'm putting out there. That's more paramount than anything. Just do quality material that you like. And I've done some shitty stuff before. Like I don't feel like I've even fully come into my own as far as what I'm doing now, but it is a process, and like consistency. You just keep doing it and you keep going at it and you'll get better, and like, I heard that you're going to be doing a 20-minute, like, full set here soon.
Well, I'm ready for it. I got 20 minutes and I'm, my buddy Keith, he needs a 10-minute video for me to get permission from the producer to allow me to feature for him when he's headlining at the Bellflower at the stand-up comedy. So nice. That's in February. So, praying that, like, I'm doing a show Saturday night. It's a late night show, and it's at the Fourth Wall, which you've been to with your favorite proprietor of a business, I'm sure, Joe Bando. Super nice to you. Let me tell you.
Oh, yeah. That was an interesting story. I bet that guy's really nice. I think he is. He probably was just like, what is this asshole doing? And I'm like, just standing here.
Yeah. No, he's an interesting dude, but like, I love Joe. I mean, he's a big part of like how I've been able to be consistent and disciplined and work as much as I have at my craft because of his establishments and stuff. And now they have professional recording guys come in for the shows on Fridays and Saturdays. So that is going to happen Saturday. I asked him, I was supposed to get 8 minutes. I asked him for an extra 2 because I need 10 for this video. And so hopefully we'll have a good crowd and everybody will be laughing and having a good time. And I kill it. So that video will then get me to that 20-minute spot. Because I mean, that's really, you get to a certain level, man. You start out all these 5-minute sets and it's like, okay, you're working on your 5, then you get to your 10. But like, to really settle in and get your point across, slow down, and actually kind of like let the crowd get to know you, you really need a 15 to 20-minute set.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And
next king of comedy here, folks. I'm calling it.
You've said it. I appreciate it. So that's kind of where I'm at. And like you said, consistency and discipline, those are the keys. And that's the one thing that I think with stand-up, I definitely, in my life, I've never put anything into anything as much as I have to this,
It's good, man. I believe
in it. Getting up 4 or 5 nights a week, like it has to be like, you have to work that muscle. You have to constantly be rewriting and working on your jokes. And
I'll tell you one thing that's really helped me is sobriety. I mentioned probably a few weeks ago that I've been clean for a year, and that I will say I did like doing drugs for a long time, but it came to a point in my life where it just monopolized my time, affected my sanity. And now I'm able to once I got off drugs or whatever, now I'm like, okay, I'm going to book this show and I'm going to book this show and I'm going to book this show. And it's been kind of like a domino effect for me. I'm booked up for the next 2 months, which is fucking great, man. And like keeping a schedule, like, I give mad props to Drew Stone from the New York Hardcore Chronicles Incendiary Device, who's been on my show, who is great. He does it every day, every Sunday at 3 p.m. And I'm like, man, that's how you gain a following. And that's, just because it's like a TV show. It comes on every time. Okay, when am I going to be ready to watch Drew's show? Oh, 3 o'clock on Sunday. Boom, And so I started doing it a few hours after his, so it's almost like late night, and then the Tonight Show late night, after you're done watching Drew's show, come over and watch my show, like, so
Right.
it's great.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's great, man. I mean, it's like, we're gonna, I think humans have addictive tendencies and personalities. It's like, what are we going to be addicted to, though? I mean, is it going to be weed? Is it going to be alcohol? Is it going to be meth? Or is it going to be, or is it going to be sex? Or is it going to be like working out and reading and, your craft and grinding? Like, because to me, it's an obsession, stand-up comedy, right? Like the podcast is for you.
Yeah. One of my vices right now is video games, and I'll trade that for fucking drug use any day, though. I mean, it is.
Yeah, totally.
It's not good, ideally, in the long run, but I want to thank the creators of Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom for being able to keep me on the sober path for about 3 months.
There you go. I like it.
So yeah, I think I mentioned I've been playing, and I slept on this game for so long, Red Dead Redemption, which is fucking awesome. It's a Western-based game that kind of plays like Grand Theft Auto, because it's one of the creators or the company Rockstar Games. They made that, and it's a lot of fun. But I'll have to eventually kind of, curtail it and make it less prevalent in my life.
Right on. Well, man, we're here. We're about the 2-hour mark. So, you crushed it. You absolutely great episode. Good conversation as always.
And thank you, sir, for having me.
I appreciate you helping me out with this and being my first guest. And, this was just awesome. Good conversation. That's what it's all about,
Absolutely.
And,
absolutely.
Look forward to having you on again in the near future, man. Like I feel like we never run out of things to talk about.
No. And you're definitely extended the re-invite for my show cool. Probably here in the new future, because I think it's been about a year. I've been trying to give some time before I revisit my old guests to, not rehash like old shit, like to be able to, kind of meet you where you're at in a year, be like, what's different, what's going on, and like, I can say personally for myself, like, there's been almost like a complete about face in my life, which I really appreciate. And I thank any of my friends for doing that have, Don Fu specifically. Don's like an older brother to me, and has been really kind of like coaching me and guiding me. And spirituality, Krishna consciousness, all that stuff. It's been pretty instrumental in, keeping me grounded.
Well, let the people know where they can find you online and whatnot.
Okay. So if you see in the little box there, the IG is at the TNF podcast on Instagram. You can also follow me on my merchandise company at Hell's Heart CO on Instagram. And my website is hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Like I said, we just did a Zayo Event Horizon shirt. We did a shirt for Paris Mayhew from Cro-Mag's new project, the Agros, which it's a apocalypse.
Agros are great.
Yeah. Instrumental, like punk rock and like epic progressive punk rock. I really dig it a lot. Yeah. And then we got a bunch of movie themed shirts on there, and those are all on sale for $20. So go and pick one up, so I don't have to always eat ramen noodles. All right. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
That's it. All right, guys. Joe Bando here for Bando Talks and the Everything Podcast. I want to thank Jay Curtis Strickland for hanging out, having good conversation, and we will see you next time. Thanks.